Hello, I'm Doug Burkett with the Department of Defense. I'm from a small office under the Secretary of Defense called the Armed Forces Pest Management Board. This office is responsible for pest management and pesticide policy and guidance for the Department of Defense. Our office, along with our teammates from DoD Natural Resources under the same Pentagon leadership, are generally the best POCs for pollinator conservation. Standard disclaimer, these views are my own and not necessarily those of the Department of Defense. So DoD is the fifth largest federal land management agency. We're responsible for managing 25 million acres of land. We have more than 500 military installations, along with associated testing and training ranges. We have over 3 million employees on active duty and civil service and countless numbers of defense contractors. And you might ask, why does DoD need a pollinator conservation program? Well, the short answer is that DoD needs healthy, biologically diverse training landscapes in order to conduct our required testing and readiness training. Efforts to proactively help prevent additional endangered species listings with subsequent mitigations and land use restrictions are considered essential to our mission. Herewith a graphic showing the approximate location of U.S. military installations and associated testing and training ranges across the U.S. The various colors represent the different military services. You can see that our installations are broadly distributed, with many in locations and areas with high biodiversity and generally conducive to pollinator conservation. As for policy and resources for pollinators, most of the pollinator conservation language is contained in the Department of Defense Natural Resources Instruction and the associated manual for Integrated Natural Resource Management Plan implementation, as required per the Sykes Act. The individual services have their own implementing regulations. Depicted in the upper right is the newly revised Unified Facilities Criteria, UFC, for landscape architecture. Therein are the requirements for landscaping on DoD facilities and include new language on mandating the use of native plants, non-invasive species, and plants conducive for pollinator conservation. I even saw some language in there for including pollinator corridors wherever feasible. In the lower right is a recently published reference guide for pollinator conservation. Via contract, the Air Force hired a team from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that was led by Dolores Savignano to write this particular reference for our DoD land managers. This guide is available as a technical guide number 9 on our Pest Management Board website. Also, I wanted to mention that there is a DoD pollinator working group under the National Military Fish and Wildlife Association, where about 200 DoD natural resource managers share pollinator-related projects, literature, best management practices, and advice. Pollinator monitoring isn't a requirement on most DoD lands and generally doesn't compete well for land management and conservation funding. That said, there are a number of military installations with standout pollinator conservation and monitoring efforts. What the listed installations here have in common is that all of them have threatened and endangered species, species at risk, or sensitive ecosystem where monitoring is either mandated per Endangered Species Act regulatory requirement or done as a preventive measure to prevent additional formal listings or designation of critical habitat. What might be a surprise to some members of the native bee network is that DoD does support and fund pollinator-related research. The DoD Legacy Program, funded by DoD Natural Resources, for example, continues to fund an outstanding Western monarch monitoring effort on 6 Western DoD installations and has found some interesting results associated with Western monarch breeding phenology. Also, DoD's Environmental Research Program via the Strategic Environmental Research and Development Program, CERTIP, and the Environmental Security Technology Certification Program, ESTCP, periodically sends out requests for proposals for pollinator-related research. On the slide are some CERTIP and ESTCP-related pollinator projects funded over the last 10 years. Though many of these are for bats, host plants, and leps, there are some ongoing and future projects to directly determine pollinator species based on swabs of host plants using environmental DNA. we all kind of hope that works out. On this final slide, I want to acknowledge the outstanding efforts of our DoD natural resources and operational land managers who have a strong conservation ethos and understand the importance of healthy, biologically diverse training landscapes to keep common species common. As for DoD pollinator monitoring needs, and as mentioned on an earlier slide, the military installations with the most extensive pollinator monitoring efforts tend to be those with some regulatory requirement to do so. That they are either being proactive to help prevent additional ESA listings, while DoD strives to conduct pollinator and other invertebrate surveys and monitoring efforts on as many installations as possible. These sorts of projects often do not compete well for limited land management resources. Another need, at least for our DoD headquarters natural resources program managers, is that we don't have a list of pollinator monitoring resources that we can share with the field. The perception is that pollinator monitoring efforts with competent personnel are expensive and difficult to find. My final comment to the group is to convey that the DoD generally welcomes collaboration with other agencies, NGOs, and academics to use our lands for research, particularly if the research and monitoring efforts support our mission and land management objectives in our integrated natural resource management plans and our operational plans. I thank you for the invitation to speak to this group and for your time. Please contact me if you have any questions or need DoD POCs.